no statutory formula or amount or guideline to tell you exactly how long maintenance should be paid. It's very case specific. If you've been married for more than 10 years, I would say maybe you would be looking at maintenance for a third of the length to half of the length of the marriage. If you do that maintenance waiver in your final agreement, you can't go back and ask for maintenance at any point in the future, even if circumstances change.
Well, hello, everyone. And I have with me today attorney Bailey Holt. Bailey is a senior associate with us at Sterling Law Offices. We are lucky to have her joining us again to continue our conversation on maintenance. So welcome, Bailey.
Thank you.
And you joined us on an earlier episode regarding maintenance and who might be eligible to receive it, what factors play into a determination of who gets maintenance. And I want to continue that conversation because maintenance is a complicated discussion, and I'd like to go into more detail on how long does maintenance last and can it change once it's established? So I get that question. I mean, as soon as we start talking about maintenance with clients, it's how long will I have to pay it, or how long will I receive it? And what happens if my spouse, moves out or gets married? Like, those questions all play into this. And so I would like to dig into some of those questions with you. Any insight or kind of general rule of thumb that you can provide us on how long is maintenance paid?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the previous episode of maintenance being extremely gray. There's no statutory formula or amount or guideline to tell you exactly how long maintenance should be paid. It's very case specific. You can look at what judges have done in the past, at previous case law, and it's judge's discretion too, right? Like I think we had mentioned in our previous conversation too, a Milwaukee County judge might do something very different than a Waukesha County judge. The duration depends on all of the factors that are outlined in the maintenance statute. But I would say the one when determining the length of maintenance, the factor that's used or relied upon most heavily would be the length of the marriage. And maybe also the age and health of parties would be another one that's looked at when determining the length of maintenance.
I got it. And have you ever, seen where maintenance it's not predetermined exactly how long it's going to be paid, that it's sort of open-ended?
Yeah. So maintenance can be indefinite, meaning that there's an order saying that it shouldn't be paid anymore, or there can be a certain timeline. For example, 5 years. You could say we think maintenance should be paid for 5 years. It ends in 5 years. But it also could be held open. And that would depend too on the length of the marriage, the age and health of the parties. Those factors would determine how long the specific maintenance term is for. I would say a good starting point would be maybe around, if you've been married for more than 10 years, I would say maybe you would be looking at maintenance for a third of the length to half of the length of the marriage would be maybe some guidelines to use. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly where your maintenance term is going to fall, but that might be a good starting point.
Got it. Okay. And once it is established, whether it's for 10 years or an indefinite period of time, are there reasons why then maintenance could be changed, modified?
A lot of that can be built into your final agreement, and you can agree upon certain terms on how you want the maintenance to play out. For example, some people might agree that it's non-modifiable by amount or term, and it's just 5 years, $1,000 a month, can't change it. Some people might put in their specific agreement that it can be modified if there's a substantial change in circumstance. A substantial change in circumstance would be something like one party being remarried or cohabitating with a new partner. If one party loses their job, starts making a lot more money, one party retires, those would all be substantial changes for purposes of modifying maintenance down the road.
Is it a given if, let's say, your ex-wife, who you are paying maintenance to, and she moves in with her boyfriend or your new boyfriend, a couple years after the divorce, is that a given then that maintenance will stop?
Not necessarily. I would say most agreements have built in that maintenance would terminate upon one party remarrying. So if she marries this person and it's written into your agreement, maintenance would terminate. But cohabitation is a little bit trickier. If you specifically could write that into your agreement, that cohabitation with a long term partner could end maintenance. But just because someone's cohabitating with someone doesn't necessarily automatically mean that maintenance is going to be terminated.
Understood. What about a situation where maybe at the time of the divorce, there's not a justification for maintenance? Um, and you say, nope, I don't want maintenance. We can terminate maintenance. Can you then change your mind later?
No, I would say there's really three different options with maintenance. One would be you can have maintenance be ordered, and then you can determine the specifics of what that order is. The second would be maintenance is held open, meaning you're not requesting it at that time, but down the road, you're wanting to have the ability to go back and request it. And the final would be a maintenance waiver. And if you waive maintenance, if you do that maintenance waiver in your final agreement, you can't go back and ask for maintenance at any point in the future, even if circumstances change. Even if the very next day you go and your husband goes and wins the lottery or goes and starts making $1 million, you cannot go back and have that be modified once you have waived maintenance.
That's some long lasting implications if there is a waiver, a permanent forever waiver at the time of the divorce. Um, how are these payments actually made in practice? Is this like a personal check going between the parties every month?
No, it's actually paid through the county that you're divorced in. So, what happens is once the maintenance amount is determined, it gets directly withheld from the payer's paycheck, and you can set up the other party can get direct deposit set up into their banking account. And that way they can be tracked. The court can track exactly when payments are made, how much is paid, if they're timely made. So if there ever becomes issues down the road about maintenance payments being made, there's a clear record on what's been paid to the other party.
Got it. So that's going to come directly out of a paycheck, go through the support system, and
Mm-hmm.
will be received by the recipient of the maintenance. And that way there's this checks and balances on have the payments actually been made and received.
Correct.
What happens if the person who's supposed to pay maintenance fails to pay, refuses to pay? Then what?
You would have to, if they're refusing to pay, you would have to file a contempt motion with the court and get a court date. It means they're violating a court order. So you'd have to make the court aware that they're in violation of a court order and get a court date in front of a commissioner or a judge and make them aware of the issue.
And are there penalties if somebody does that? If they sort of intentionally say, I don't care about a court order, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the time they're monetary. Maybe there's interest applied to the missed maintenance payments. Maybe they're having to pay the other party's attorney's fees for having to bring this motion. Contempt of a court order. You can get jail time, very worst case scenario. So, contempt is not a good thing. And you want to make sure that if you ever get to a point where you're unable to pay a maintenance payment, that you're requesting that it be modified.
Meaning you lose your job or you have a pay cut or.
Yeah, the court doesn't just automatically know if you lose your job or have a pay cut, and that's why you aren't paying maintenance. When there's a court order in place, it stays in place until it's modified by a new court order. So you have to go to the court and request that a maintenance payment be modified if your specific financial circumstances have changed and impacted your ability to be able to pay maintenance.
So act quickly. That's what you're saying. Something changes in your life. You got to act quickly because the court's not likely to look backwards and make changes. They're proactively, preemptively moving forward for future, but not looking backwards.
Absolutely. And you're not going to get a court date the day after you file. Different counties have different waiting periods for when you're going to be able to get a court date, but get a court date scheduled as soon as possible.
What if somebody is really just adverse to the idea of money coming out of his or her paycheck every single month and going to their ex-spouse? Is there an option to give the money up front?
Yeah, so there's what's called a maintenance buyout. A maintenance buyout is where one party or the parties could agree that instead of the recipient getting a monthly spousal support payment, they could calculate how much maintenance would be over a set period of time, and just pay it up front. And then at that point, there wouldn't be any monthly maintenance payments. That's something that both parties would have to agree to. It's not something that a court would typically order to have happen. But if you both agree that you're okay with doing a maintenance buyout, you can do that. A lot of parties that choose to do that like that option because it kind of creates some finality in your divorce. You're not having continued ties to this person with a monthly support payment. So that is definitely an option if you have assets available to be able to do that buyout up front.
I mean, and it's sort of a bird in the hand, two in the bush, right? I mean, it sounds like for the person paying it, it's nice to have that finality be done. You don't see the money coming out of your paycheck every month. And for the person receiving it, it's like get your money up front and you don't have to have this attachment long term
Yeah.
to your ex-spouse. So I could see a win-win situation if the resources are there.
Yeah.
You had mentioned in our last episode of maintenance not being punitive. It might feel that way. I mean, is the purpose of maintenance to, keep these ex-spouses tethered to each other financially? Or, I mean, what does the court use this as? Like, why is it ordered?
They just want to make sure that both parties it's fair and both parties are able to have their needs met. They want to make sure that after the divorce, both parties are able to continue to support themselves and enjoy a lifestyle that they did during the marriage is what the courts just want to set both parties up post divorce to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle as they had during the marriage.
And would you say that a specific timeline of payments is more common or an indefinite payment is more common?
It depends on the length of the marriage, I would say. For longer term marriages, I would say probably more indefinite, but maybe a shorter, and by longer term, I mean like 30-year marriage. And when I'm saying shorter term, maybe 10 to 20 years, you would have like a set time length of how long maintenance would be paid for.
Got it. So when you start approaching those very long-term marriages, that's when you might see an indefinite payment.
Yep,
As
exactly.
opposed as opposed to an understanding of, well, this is how much you're paying, because you're really just, it sounds like, trying to ensure that both spouses have the opportunity to be successful. And it's not intended to be a forever payment. It's really just intended to get the recipient spouse, set up to kind of bridge them to a new chapter in their life. And that's the intention of maintenance here.
Exactly. Yes.
Very helpful. Well, this was insightful, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us, Bailey. And I hope this was helpful to all of you listeners out there.
Thank you.
You just learned how long maintenance lasts and when it can change, but most people think cheating automatically affects spousal support. That's wrong. What actually impacts your maintenance might shock you. Find out what really matters to Wisconsin courts regarding spousal support in our next video.